Good morning, everyone. I am Lou Stern. I am president of Stern Consulting and a senior advisor to the Institute of Coaching. I am a helping professional. I have a background as an organizational consulting psychologist, but throughout my life, and I've been doing this for about 40 years, my job has changed. Working with individuals, working in organizations, working at the lower levels. And now, you know, the older you get, the more you get to pick. At least that's what I find. So when I first had my first grandchild about 10 years ago, I stepped back and I reassessed where I was spending my time. And I found that I was on autopilot and that I was really waiting for the calls to come in to work with leaders who had been identified by their organizations as needing help. So I'd like to give a quick story of an example of that happened very recently and tell you how I've changed and gotten off of autopilot and I'm driving in manual. So I got called by a large company and the managing partner said, we have this great leader who has so much potential, but you know, he needs some executive presence. He needs to be more decisive. He needs to have more confidence. He needs to be more assertive. And the needs went on. There were about 5 or 10 things, and they were probably what many of you face all the time. And what I found myself doing 10 years ago was focusing on that individual as a leader in the coaching. And that's what I did almost solely. And what I wasn't doing was looking at the whole person and looking at the whole organizational system and looking at the whole environment in which that person lived and worked. So what I did with that person was, first I spent 2 months before I started working with that person as they were being assigned to a new senior role, researching the environment in which they worked and lived. And then when I did the 360, I went into the person's home and I met their spouse and I met their children. And I interviewed 36 people for an hour each, very qualitatively, to find out what that person did. Thanks to my friend and colleague Donna Carlin, I shadowed that person in everything they did for several months. And what I learned was who that person was, both as an individual, as a leader, and as a family person. What I found was that the original 10 goals really weren't important. They would come, and they have. He's been promoted to managing partner. Thank goodness. But more importantly, to begin with, he wasn't sleeping. Literally, he was sleeping 3 or 4 hours a night. He wasn't exercising. He was overweight. He wasn't smiling. He didn't have an intimate relationship with his wife. His kids didn't know him. He was sad, and yet he pretended to be happy. And today, he is happy. He smiles. He is sleeping. He has an exercise regime. He spends time with his kids. And he gets to know the people with whom he works. And to me, it's coaching, if that's what we want to call it, is giving sight to the blind, giving comfort to the afflicted, and afflicting the comfortable. And in this case, he needed all three. And that's what makes me happy to be a coach.